If you want to make interesting videos, you've got to familiarize yourself with the different camera angles and exactly why you might choose to use them, what the audience sort of associates with them, and how they might be effective for you to intentionally get a point across, inform somebody, educate somebody, entertain somebody, right? So we're going to be looking at all sorts of examples of still photos that are from films and TV, and we're going to look at exactly how they, like what category do these fit under, and how are they working, and why maybe have they been chosen. So the most basic camera angle that I could think of is the eye level camera, right? So we're going to be looking directly at our subject. We're going to be at their level. It gives us a sense of sort of, well, we are in touch with this character, right? We don't feel like we're up above them or below them somehow, which again, we're going to associate these things, or at least we'll explore how audiences have associated different camera angles with sort of different sense of how we view a character. But if our camera level is right at eye level with our subject, then we're going to feel like we're on the same level as them, right? We are similar, if not giving us the opportunity to put ourselves in their shoes, right? It also gives us a sense that, well, we can sort of get a feeling for how this person is actually, what their emotions are like, right? Again, we can almost flip-flop ourselves and put ourselves in their position because, well, we're in the same position that they are actually, right? It's also one of those things that, well, maybe we don't think about it so much, but it actually allows us an opportunity to explain to the audience that this is a moment of like level-headedness, a time where we can really associate ourselves with this character, that there's nothing else that's sort of that's determining how that person feels, right? So it's going to be much more about the nuances of maybe the actor or the content around that's going to reveal those things to us. We're not using the angle of the camera to explain those things. Next up is the high angle. So we've placed the camera up high above our subjects and it's tilted down pointing at them. What does this signify to our audience? Well, what it means is that there's this feeling of those characters that are being looked down on are inferior in some way, right? So in the circumstance that we're looking at right here, well, there's some exposition, there's some plot point about climbing up something, right? About this, the bed sheet knotted up or whatever. So there's a reason for them to be looking up. But also, you have to imagine that in other circumstances, when we see this high angle, it might also be we, the audience, are taking on the view of looking down on the subject. So we might assume the perspective of, like, say, Thanos from the Avengers. And we are rising up and standing tall above the Avengers, and we're looking down on them. We're taking on that perspective. So in that circumstance, the subjects then become inferior and look small as a result. So there's always like sort of a double-edged sword here. Based on the angle that you're getting, it's like, well, what is this high angle, or what is this particular angle explaining to us? What is it revealing to the audience? Is it something about the story or the narrative, or is it making us feel a certain way about the subject? Because again, as filmmakers, as media production people, we manipulate our audience. So we're adding this high angle to our tool belt to be able to achieve a desired result. We want our audience to feel this way about these characters, and I can achieve that, or I can reinforce that with the angle of the camera. Our low angle is making Batman look real badass right here, right? Okay, it looks like Batman is in control. There's all these other things happening around him, but he's steadfast and holding strong, and we're looking up. We're looking up to Batman to be the savior, right? If this were an eye-level angle, we wouldn't have the same emotional response. We wouldn't feel the same way that this is like the protector, the superhero. So this is allowing the filmmaker an opportunity to manipulate the audience and make them feel a particular way about this character. Not to mention all the other things that are going on around the subject here. So there's all this chaos sort of erupting around him, but Batman is still looking strong and standing his ground. And we're looking up from below him saying, please help us, Batman, right? Okay, the bird's eye view. This is directly up overhead. So as opposed to the high angle, this is taking that to the extreme, and we're getting right up over our subjects. And boy, are these some good examples of this happening and how we might use it in different ways. So we've got this sort of celebratory thing happening. I think this is a Great Gatsby in the middle, and we're like obviously like looking at like a New Year's party or something. Maybe the ball just dropped and there's all this glitter and stuff happening everywhere, and it's giving us an opportunity to look at this joyful sort of celebratory moment as if we're like taking the perspective of God looking down on them or something like that. But if that's not always the same emotion, it's not always associated with like a happy feeling, right? So there's other examples here. I'm looking at the upper left from Requiem for a Dream. That's not exactly the happiest movie of all time. But this bird's eye view is allowing us an opportunity to see these two characters juxtaposed in a very interesting way. It's a captivating image, and it separates itself from all the other content that we see throughout the film. So the bird's eye view is pretty unique in that as long as you don't use it all the time, it really can provide an interesting perspective. Again, it's less high angle than it is something uniquely its own, as if it's like you're sitting on a cloud looking down on something. And finally, we move on to the Dutch angle. This is where we roll the camera to its side and we go for this sort of like angle, 45-degree angle that's going to position our subjects in such a way that it's just a little bit disorienting, right? We're not going to find a Dutch angle and a symmetrically balanced shot composition. It's just not possible, right? So it automatically, as opposed to the safety and the balance of a symmetrical shot, it cocks us to the side a little bit, and it prevents us from being grounded. So you're going to find these Dutch angles in all sorts of moments of psychological distress, or moments where there's some danger or element of anxiety, right? So we can use these different camera angles to not only describe or push a narrative story forward, we can build character development, and we can also affect the audience. Well, characters also, but also affect the audience emotionally by using an interesting combination of these things. So what I would encourage you to do is to make sure that you're utilizing all of these different camera angles, and not only utilizing them, but utilizing them in an intentional way. If you're going to film a sequence of shots that you've decided on, go ahead and experiment with different camera angles as you run through all those different shots, and collect different performances or different takes using the different camera angles to see what variety you can come up with, and also how those can be useful when you're in the editing stage.